A family. You're culpable if you don't act. I am obsessively bent on quality, to an unhealthy degree. My affliction has been, I can make something or draw something or design something better than I can explain it. Indian cinema seems to be growing very well at its own pace. I'm an Obama supporter, no question. But it doesn't mean there's nothing to learn from the other side. I certainly feel injustice. I'm no foreigner to that, whether it's real or perceived. Success is a beast, and it actually puts the emphasis on the wrong thing. You get away with more instead of looking within. I always liked those moments of epiphany, when you have the next destination. In Missouri, where I come from, we don't talk about what we do, we just do it. If we talk about it, it's seen as bragging. It's a lovely experience walking around a museum by yourself. I'm drawn to furniture design as complete architecture on a minor scale. With sons and fathers, there's an inexplicable connection and imprint that your father leaves on you. We sometimes let ourselves be rated too much by others. We put so much emphasis on a paycheck or what a magazine says. I was so intent on trying to find a movie about an interesting life, but I wasn't living an interesting life myself. It's a violent world we live in. I don't agree with trying to hide that or cover it up. My happiest moment is the day they call rap and I'm free. I'm not looking back. In some ways, I'm still a kid from Missouri and Oklahoma, and I'm trying to find my way. I die really well, by the way. It's one of my strong points. I just take a bullet well. I spent the 90s trying to hide out, trying to duck the full celebrity cacophony. I always knew I was going somewhere, going out. I just knew. I just knew there were a lot more points of view out there. I start asking a lot of questions about my own life, and it's not necessarily fun, but it's a good exercise. I always thought that if I wanted to do a family, I wanted to do it big. I wanted there to be chaos in the house. What we're seeing now is that greed is still alive and kicking, and banks are bigger than ever. I think LA is impossible. There's just too much media focus. You can't live a normal life. I think someone's conversation, whether in email or in person, should be private. I didn't realize how interesting the place I come from is until I left home and saw how other cultures handled things differently. Given a chance, I would like to work with Aishwarya Rai Bachchan because she's a versatile actor. I've never seen a publicist that could protect me from things, protect anyone from what's going on out there. I grew up very religious, and I don't have a great relationship with religion. My kids are just waiting for me at home. I'm their father. They're wondering, when's Daddy coming home? I'm 48 now, and whatever I get music-wise, I get from my kids, and that's it. I don't think I'll ever be hip again. I had a very supportive family environment that gave me room to explore and discover things about myself. You want to stake your own claim. You don't want to be called a copycat. The Assassination of Jesse James remains one of my favorite films that I've done. You know, it's still labeled a loser. I would love to work in a Bollywood film as there is so much drama and color in the films there. I'm satisfied with making true choices and finding the woman I love, Angie, and building a family that I love so much. I'd say that Tree of Life is not a Christian so much as a spiritual film. It's those difficult times that inform the next wonderful time. And it's a series of trade-offs, of events, of wins and losses. I get enraged when people start telling other people how to live their lives. Certainly the attrition rate of Hollywood couples looms large. I've worked with some really great directors, and I'm really choosy about them because they're telling the story at the end of the day. You need to be real enough to be believable, but you don't necessarily have to be real enough to be real. There is a distinction. Love means never having to say you're a zero. I want to see Bob Dylan do sketch comedy. I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. Richard Schiff is a really good baseball player. It's surprising because he looks exhausted. I can't believe George Bush might be president. Anybody who can dial a telephone can master tennis scoring in about 15 minutes. You don't want to become one of those Hollywood idiots who is just blathering about anything. Misogyny is at the reptilian brainstem of a lot of right-wing politics. Having an affair with an intern is just an incredibly stupid thing to do. You don't want your credibility banana to turn brown, but you do want to speak out about what you believe in. With the success of a show, you get an opportunity to call attention to things that you believe in. Cal Ripken is steady. He focuses on his job, and he's a good guy. When you act, you're always playing a version of yourself. You can't bring more to the role than what you are.
I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. Knowledge will give you power, but character respect. A wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can learn from a wise answer. The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering. It's not the daily increase but daily decrease. Hack away at the unessential. Notice that the stiffest tree is most easily cracked, while the bamboo or willow survives by bending with the wind. I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations, and you're not in this world to live up to mine. All fixed set patterns are incapable of adaptability or pliability. The truth is outside of all fixed patterns. Obey the principles without being bound by them. Take things as they are. Punch when you have to punch. Kick when you have to kick. To know oneself is to study oneself in action with another person. You just wait. I'm going to be the biggest Chinese star in the world. Man, the living creature, the creating individual, is always more important than any established style or system. Always be yourself, express yourself, have faith in yourself. Do not go out and look for a successful personality and duplicate it. Mistakes are always forgivable, if one has the courage to admit them. If you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you'll never get it done. If you love life, don't waste time, for time is what life is made up of. A goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves simply as something to aim at. A quick temper will make a fool of you soon enough. The possession of anything begins in the mind. The less effort, the faster and more powerful you will be. To hell with circumstances. I create opportunities. Take no thought of who is right or wrong or who is better than. Be not for or against.
You can't undo the past, but you can certainly not repeat it. Art imitates life and, sometimes, life imitates art. It's a weird combination of elements. I would say, I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. But I was just kidding myself. My wife heard me say I love you 1,000 times, but she never once heard me say sorry. I'm much more proud of being a father than being an actor. I mean, look, I wear makeup in films. I don't wear makeup in real life. It's just part of the gig, that's all. I've always had confidence. Before I was famous, that confidence got me into trouble. After I got famous, it just got me into more trouble. I wake up laughing. Yes, I wake up in the morning and there I am just laughing my head off. I hate government. I'm apolitical. Write that down. I'm not a Republican. Who I am as a father is far more important to me than the public perception. I'm staggered by the question of what it's like to be a multimillionaire. I always have to remind myself that I am. I'm really just a regular guy who has had an incredibly blessed life. I believe in justice, and I believe in people being held responsible for their actions. I had never really dated. I've always been a relationship kind of person. I think the rules are going to have to change for me to ever run for public office. My checkered past will always keep me out of politics. On the one hand, we'll never experience childbirth. On the other hand, we can open all our own jars. Justin Timberlake is terrific in this film. I told him it's time to stop singing. Hair loss is God's way of telling me I'm human. But the action film genre is gonna have to come up with some new bad guys. Too many children in foster care are falling through cracks. Be a hero, take the time, learn about adoption today. Everybody, no matter how old you are, is around 24, 25 in their heart. Violence, look, we live in a violent world, man. This country was founded on violence. Who's kidding who? If you catch him, just give me 4 seconds with Saddam Hussein. I like having the dough to come and go as I please. I just try to go to work and concentrate on coming home to my girls. I hate working out. Because I work out for films now solely, I come to associate it with work. Like it or not, I am part of the pop culture of films in Hollywood. Every day, I work at not taking this fame thing seriously. Fortunately, I have a great group of friends who help me do this. I learned long ago to focus on things you can control and don't even pay attention to things you don't. Love is not as important as good health. You cannot be in love if you're not healthy. You can't appreciate it. I'm pretty handy. I do a lot of things around the house, and I actually enjoy it. Mixing humor and politics is something that works. Love between two adults is always conditional. You can fall out of love because you are able to fall in love. The only thing that we as actors really can control is to be able to say yes or no to the material. You need to tell the truth to the audience, or they will throw a brick through the TV. They'll turn you off. I have talked to stunt drivers all my life, 32 years of talking to stunt drivers. There's a craziness to them. Bad for the sake of bad is boring to me and not believable. With craziness, you can't predict it. There's very little defense you can have on craziness. I have a lovely family who supports me and it's great. Any kind of civil rights oppression is wrong. The imagination is part of the arsenal that actors draw from. If you like vanilla, you're not going to like Breaking Bad. You need to like a specific flavor that is unusual, that is different, that takes risks. My goal has always been to be a working actor. Given the right set of circumstances, any one of us could become dangerous, so why not show that in our programs? Viewers can determine what they want to watch and what they don't want to watch. Every time you start a project, you're hopeful that the critics receive it warmly. Every experience feeds an actor, and I've learned that depression is all around us. I love acting because it's empowering. It empowers me. What's great about well-written material is, if you can shock with justifiable actions, that's the best. Part of an actor's job is to draw up a backstory. At my age, I don't think anyone is untouched by cancer. Being a day player, period, is one of the hardest things you can do as an actor. There's this notion that in order to draw attention and to be considered for roles I want to be considered for, you need a certain amount of notoriety. When actors first come up, you're auditioning for everything. You're trying to sniff it out like a pig with a truffle, and you would do anything. As a director, you come in and tell the actors how good they are. People would love to be rich, but they're looking for the easy way. Who wouldn't want to win the lottery, just to score? It's up to the actor to make sure they don't get typecast. If you have a screaming angry director, everyone else will be panicked as well. I enjoy doing comedy for the fact that you go to work and you laugh. That's a good combination. I appreciate my role as an actor much more after I direct because it's just easier. It's mind-altering when you slip into someone else's shoes. That's psychedelic, man. I can tell you for sure, people who are at their peak right now will not sustain that. You can. It's against the law of nature. This self-congratulatory notion Americans have that their country is number one is born of ignorance and bad manners. There are far more talented people doing voice work than I. The only difference between a hero and the villain is that the villain chooses to use that power in a way that is selfish and hurts other people. You have to cherish things in a different way when you know the clock is ticking. You are under pressure. People don't want to experience change. They just want to wake up, and it's different. When it comes down to it, I'd rather have an action figure than a Golden Globe. I'm not really interested in being a superhero. That's not a box I've been trying to check off. As an African American actor, a lot of our stories haven't been told. We live in a world where people can ridicule you at the push of the button. They can question you at the push of a button. Sometimes when you're acting, you only need a little bit of something to sort of channel or transport into a place. When I met Rachel Robinson for the first time, she is a regal woman, and she was like a grandmother in that first meeting. When you play characters, you shouldn't just be putting on their characteristics, you should be finding it inside yourself. When you're doing a character, you want to know the full landscape. You want to know them spiritually, mentally and physically. I might have had too many friends in my 20s. The industry looks for white actors and actresses, but it's not the same for black actors. We have to really put the work in. Colonialism is the cousin of slavery. I'm not so keen on letting my car drive itself. A superhero movie is only as great as its villains. There are some stories I want to tell that I think it'd be cool to see an African American dude do. Nobody has to give me permission to write. I got scars from every film I've done, every TV show. Guys are natural problem solvers. They like to have strategies. I studied at Howard. I studied at Oxford. I would love to play Jimi Hendrix. I don't have a smart house. My house is very dumb. I can definitely dance, but pedestrian dancing. One of the first things I was taught as an actor was, don't judge the character. I don't read reviews, but I do get feedback from my peers and people I know, like other actors and directors and producers. I think there's a difference between a working actor, a movie star and a celebrity. They're all three different things. People have said, you don't need to do any more biopics. You don't need to play any more real people. I don't agree with that. As a director, it is important to understand the actor's process. I wasn't a comic book geek as a kid. I read some, but it was just like, oh, I have this comic book here. It wasn't like I was collecting them. They should probably have a James Brown aerobic tape. You would lose a lot of weight. I thought I would draw or paint or be an architect. I was always drawing portraits. My mom put me in art classes in the summer. I can't even imagine something being more fun than playing James Brown on stage. I'd taken, maybe some African dance classes a couple of times, but I wasn't a musical theater person at all. I think the most stressful time of my life was when I was in New York, and I didn't have money to pay my rent.
Those men get along best with women who can get along best without them. I can barely conceive of a type of beauty in which there is no melancholy. There exist only three beings worthy of respect: the priest, the soldier, the poet. To know, to kill, to create. How little remains of the man I once was, save the memory of him. But remembering is only a new form of suffering. A sweetheart is a bottle of wine. A wife is a wine bottle. Beauty is the sole ambition, the exclusive goal of taste. This life is a hospital in which every patient is possessed with a desire to change his bed. To the solemn graves, near a lonely cemetery, My heart like a muffled drum is beating funeral marches. God is the only being who, in order to reign, doesn't even need to exist. Modernity is the transient, the fleeting, the contingent. It is one half of art, the other being the eternal and the immovable. As a small child, I felt in my heart two contradictory feelings: the horror of life and the ecstasy of life. Whether you come from heaven or hell, what does it matter, O beauty? It is the hour to be drunken, to escape being the martyred slaves of time, be ceaselessly drunk, on wine, on poetry, or on virtue, as you wish. Any healthy man can go without food for 2 days, but not without poetry. The study of beauty is a duel in which the artist cries with terror before being defeated. It is necessary to work, if not from inclination, at least from despair. Everything considered, work is less boring than amusing oneself. Two fundamental literary qualities: supernaturalism and irony. Everything that is beautiful and noble is the product of reason and calculation. There are as many kinds of beauty as there are habitual ways of seeking happiness. The insatiable thirst for everything which lies beyond, and which life reveals, is the most living proof of our immortality. For the merchant, even honesty is a financial speculation. It is by universal misunderstanding that all agree. For if, by ill luck, people understood each other, they would never agree. For each letter received from a creditor, write 50 lines on an extraterrestrial subject and you'll be saved. Evil is committed without effort, naturally, fatally. Goodness is always the product of some art. I love Wagner, but the music I prefer is that of a cat hung up by its tail outside a window and trying to stick to the panes of glass with its claws. Anybody, providing he knows how to be amusing, has the right to talk about himself. Nearly all our originality comes from the stamp that time impresses upon our sensibility. A book is a garden, an orchard, a storehouse, a party, a company by the way, a counselor, a multitude of counselors. Let us beware of common folk, of common sense, of sentiment, of inspiration, and of the obvious. What is exhilarating in bad taste is the aristocratic pleasure of giving offense. Modernity signifies the transitory, the fugitive, the contingent, the half of art of which the other half is the eternal and the immutable. The man who says his evening prayer is a captain posting his sentinels. He can sleep. A frenzied passion for art is a canker that devours everything else. To handle a language skillfully is to practice a kind of evocative sorcery. There is no dream of love, however ideal it may be, which does not end up with a fat, greedy baby hanging from the breast. All which is beautiful and noble is the result of reason and calculation. To be a great man and a saint for oneself, that is the only important thing. Who would dare assign to art the sterile function of imitating nature? The priest is an immense being because he makes the crowd believe astonishing things. Evil is done without effort. Naturally, it is the working of fate. Good is always the product of an art. It would perhaps be nice to be alternately the victim and the executioner. Common sense tells us that the things of the earth exist only a little, and that true reality is only in dreams. It would be difficult for me not to conclude that the most perfect type of masculine beauty is Satan, as portrayed by Milton. In literature as in ethics, there is danger, as well as glory, in being subtle. Aristocracy isolates us. Any man who does not accept the conditions of life sells his soul. There is no such thing as a long piece of work, except one that you dare not start. If the poet has pursued a moral objective, he has diminished his poetic force. Even if it were proven that God didn't exist, religion would still be saintly and divine. I am unable to understand how a man of honor could take a newspaper in his hands without a shudder of disgust. The poet enjoys the incomparable privilege of being able to be himself and others, as he wishes. I always say that the times in my life when I have been happiest are the times when I've seen, like, a sunset. But my happiness in this world, my level of peace, is never going to be dictated by acting. I've managed to do movies and still keep a lifestyle where I can go to ball games, go to a grocery store like everybody else. If you want to be around in 10 years, you've got to do something to differentiate yourself from the pack. I weep at everything. I love things so much, I just never want to dilute that. I wish you could see some of the girls I have genuinely had crushes on in my life. They're not the girls you would assume. Everybody goes and sees Fantastic Four, but nobody sees Sunshine. I'd have a different career if people saw that. I've been able to make films over the past 10 years but still maintain my anonymity. I swear to God, if you saw me when I am by myself in the woods, I'm a lunatic. I sing, I dance. My mom told me that the best thing you could give a woman was attention. Everything that Marvel does, it's a chess move. Nothing is by accident. I had no idea there were so many ways you could burn yourself out. For the youth, the indignation of most things will just surge as each birthday passes. I can handle the craziness some of the time, maybe most of the time. But I know I can't handle it all of the time. My mom fought for feminism in her day, so instilled in me the importance of equality. She taught me so much about women. I'm a pretty decent tap dancer. I enjoy all types of dancing, actually. Every guy I know has some sort of freak injury in their body. I like wet hair and sweatpants. I like sneakers and ponytails. My 20s was a time for self-exploration and, okay, a little self-indulgence. Anyone who's had a tattoo knows once you get your first one, as you're walking out the door, you're planning the next. Look at pictures of me growing up. It wasn't always the way it is now. It was a bumpy road for me. I hung out with the jocks. It doesn't mean I necessarily was one. I was just kind of there. I like Notting Hill. If you can do a movie that's simple, but do it well, there's room for that. I am just enjoying my youth, but I want to settle down eventually. For me, life is about experience and being a good person. I almost feel more anxious lately about, here's your opportunity, now you've got to make something of it. I feel like I'm ready for any dangerous situation that might come my way,
provided I have a hammer on me. I enjoy working on a movie that lets your imagination run wild. It's great to be a part of and watch. For 3 years, I had embarrassing haircuts. The more conflict and contrast you have with a character makes it more interesting. Well, I'll keep on auditioning, and one day maybe I'll go to LA and try out for films there. Sometimes there is more exploration in the character for a villain. Not often do you approach a character where people know more about him than you do. It wasn't until Thor that I started lifting weights. It was all pretty new to me. Growing up, I always loved films that transport you to another world and has things you never see in everyday life. It is often difficult to watch yourself on screen, especially 60 feet high. As an actor, it is an uncomfortable experience. Working with Anthony Hopkins every day is a blessing. Work all paled into the background as soon as I had a baby. I'd much rather put on weight than have to lose weight. As kids, our experiences shape our opinions of ourselves and the world around us, and that's who we become as adults. As a kid, you run around the house pretending to be a superhero, and now to be doing it as a job, I feel very lucky. I get to stay active, and that is my job at the moment, so I can't complain. I put the costume on and said it's not very comfortable, but it looks amazing, so it's all good. Eating when you're not hungry and taking in that amount of food is exhausting. I love that Viking era, but also there are fatalistic people, and that dictated their fearlessness in battle and approach to life. My father and I are very similar and have a wonderful relationship, but we both stand by our opinions. I'm not into watching stuff I did last week, let alone 3 or 4 years ago. Growing up, my parents were my heroes, in the way they conducted their lives. My dad works in child protection, and he spent many years in that line of work. You come to America, and if you do a big TV show, then you can be overexposed, or old, before you're new. Having a director who is also an actor makes for that very relaxed way of working, and it's empowering. I can remember watching Lord of the Rings and being truly regretful that I wasn't a being in that world. Working out is incredibly boring. I swear it's true that the bigger your muscles get, the fewer brain cells you have. Certainly I have no attraction to misery. I don't intentionally go for dark. The only thing that I'm obsessed with is sleeping, and actually, it is more than an obsession, it is a pleasure. I tend to think you're fearless when you recognize why you should be scared of things, but do them anyway. I find something fascinating about the quiet man in the background who has no desire to be the center of attention. Planning a career, I always find that such a tricky thing, because I don't have much of a plan, really. The interesting thing about a movie is the movie. An actor should never be larger than the film he's in. I'm an actor, I'm not a politician. I always kick myself when I talk too much about family, or personal things. I don't think I'm like any of the characters I've played. They're all really far from who I am. I don't personally look to my own life experiences for answers about how to play a scene. Art is something to be proud of. Art is no compromise. I think trying too hard to be sexy is the worst thing in the world a woman can do. I only sound intelligent when there's a good script writer around. If everyone really knew what a jerk I am in real life, I wouldn't be so adored in the slightest. I think mostly it's the adventure that I will have in making the movie. That's what I look for. I'm English. Our dentistry is not world famous. My dad was the biggest influence on my life because he was never boring. In everyday life, my wife is the most wonderful. We're in love with each other beyond belief. How serious can a movie about time-traveling robots be? You want it to be cool and fun. I don't have acknowledged preferences of characters. I put on weight like Santa Claus. I just get this belly that kind of extends out. I find what I do for a living really funny. I mean, acting is kind of a hilarious thing for a grown man to call a job. I don't need to be made to look evil. I can do that on my own. I make movies that nobody will see. I've made movies that even I have never seen. They have a kind of Bob Hope and Bing Crosby thing going on. No, improvising is wonderful. But the thing is that you cannot improvise unless you know exactly what you're doing. My favorite characters are the ones that are the most successful movies. An actor really is a kind of intermediary between an audience and the piece, whether it's a play or a movie. As an actor, you become that lightning rod between the person who made the play and the audience. I have been in movies that I thought I wasn't very good in. I think I'm getting a little bit of Alzheimer's, just a little. I don't carry Lucky Charms, but I believe in those things. I have a friend of mine who does me on his answering machine, and when I call him, I answer. It's pretty strange. I always like to watch comics, and it's interesting that you can tell if someone's funny in 10 seconds. I try not to worry about things I can't do anything about. Because if I don't know my lines, I really don't know what I'm doing. Also, I think there are huge reactions sometimes, which are also mysterious. I live sort of in the country and I like that. It's very quiet, it's beautiful. People think that my favorite roles to do are villains, but I find comedy to be the most challenging and rewarding. Emotional power is maybe the most valuable thing that an actor can have. I used to love Danish. My father used to make a Boston cream pie. You never see that anymore. There probably aren't a lot of actors my age who tap dance. It's what actors call a big, juicy part when you're a leading man. I don't get a lot of those. I get a lot of supporting things. I'll tell you, Quentin Tarantino really writes the most amazing dialogue. Even in the limo, I buckle my seatbelt. I got that seatbelt on before the car moves. I don't much like being directed. I enjoy being allowed to play. As an actor, I'm rather hit and miss. I throw a lot out there, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. I'm not sure I'd write a good cookbook, but I might make a good cooking show. I've been to Chicago a lot. It's one of my favorite places. My wife is from Chicago, and I worked in the theater there a lot. I was sort of a jack of all trades in show business for a long time. I was a singer and a dancer, and then I got a job as an actor. There's something dangerous about what's funny, jarring and disconcerting. There is a connection between funny and scary. My life has been wonderful. Everybody has to be a little lucky, I think. To be honest, I was never very ambitious, and I still am not. On stage I have a natural chutzpah that audiences like. I'm out there. I like to go to work, and also, I don't have any kids. I don't have any hobbies. I don't like to travel, so going to work is kind of it. Somebody said to me that I speak English almost like somebody for whom English is not their first language. I've always played comedy. My background is musical comedy theater, and that's really where my training is. There's an impression that actors make a lot of choices. I just take what's there. I'm scared of everything. I think it's only sensible to be that way. People come up to me all the time in New York. Not for autographs, but to talk about movies, often in a very scientific way. I've been married for 46 years, and I live in a nice house. My grass is always cut. I pay my bills, and my cat loves me. I have always refused to do something that has offended me. I have been offered potential roles that are totally vulgar. As a kid, I kind of spent my life being amazed by being tricked. I love being tricked. I still love it today. I like going to the gym every day because I'm in physiotherapy every day. I find it very easy playing Bond. I think he's hilarious. He gets himself into some extraordinarily funny situations. I was sick and tired of being an English actor who did a lot of American movies because I was cheap and good. The worst situation you can have in a thriller is a lead who looks like he can handle himself. I'm definitely not satisfied about my career. I don't know how you can be. It's the very nature of things. I've always retained my privacy, but now I protect it even more. It's not like I go out there to be a sex symbol. I mean, it's nice of course, but embarrassing. There's always going to be someone with a bigger toy than yours. I know in my life there's stuff that will come back because I haven't dealt with it, and it's the same with everybody. Intimate scenes on a movie set are just dry, bizarre things, people standing around. He knows that you have ability, and what he does is he manipulates it and sort of empowers you. I don't say, can't do that, won't do that. I've never thought in that way about work. Sometimes shooting on a smaller scale, as long as things don't blow out of proportion, is very liberating. You get used to the rejection and you don't take it personally. I've got to be high class, which is sad, because I like bars. Being on your own would be sad, sick and weird. I don't trust myself. I need that balance. I think there's a lot to be said for keeping your own counsel. I have never played a role in which someone's dark side shouldn't be explored. Any voices or fantasies he lives with, those are his everyday life things. It's a Tim sandwich. The meat is fresh, but the bread is moldy. In all good westerns, the good guy is always a little bit questionable because he kind of has to make moral judgments. I stopped worrying about being desired a long time ago. When you read a novel, your own imagery is the most important. It's what makes reading such a wonderful thing. I know what I like in other actors, truth. That's the best. It makes you say, okay, I'll go with you on this. There's no real side to be on because I think it was a mess. I've never really had a desire to do Shakespeare. For me, it's just too many lines. You're creating new things in movies and people are going to steal them. In many films, as many different characters, I've killed many different people. You need to impress me, outwit me, compete with me? Go ahead, knock yourself out. I have no problem with that at all. I guess you could say I've been in my share of violent movies. Even the worst Bond movies, there's something to love about them. I used to think the press was a necessary evil and now I don't think it is. I think it's something you choose. I'm potentially worth a lot of money, but I've got to go and make something that's worth a lot of money. My mother gave me a real kick toward cooking, which was that if I wanted to eat, I'd better know how to do it myself. I genuinely believe that if you want to get in the film business, get in the film business. When you're making movies, you've got to get obsessive. I can't really dress rock and roll anymore because I'm the wrong side of 40. But I want that to be the fashion. I've always reverted to a sense of childhood, just in everyday life. I just think that the collective experience of going to see a film is something you can't recreate. If I wanted to make spy movies for the rest of my life, that would be one thing, but I don't want to just make spy movies. I want people to treat me as normally as they can. Anybody who doesn't, I feel awkward with. Some people think I am gay, which I think is awesome. Fans are really important for me. And if they take pains to write me, it's the minimum that I answer myself. People do incredible things for love, particularly for unrequited love. I'm not clean or even vaguely pleasant to be around in a domestic situation. I think any actor worth their salt wants to show as much versatility as they possibly can. You pick projects for the part, the director, and the script. I just want to do different, interesting stuff. The nerds are the ones that make the films and do loads of other really cool stuff in their life. My dad believes in God, I think. I'm not sure if my mom does. I don't. When you get as lucky as I got, you have to work as hard as possible to earn that luck. There's no shame in enjoying a quiet life. And that's been the realization of the past few years for me. It's interesting because people assume that because I'm famous I know all famous people. I love coming home to somebody. I love being in a relationship. A friend often says I'm an old man in a young man's husk.
I like that. I am old-fashioned in some ways. And well, historically it's never been a good thing to compare yourself to biblical characters. I met Elijah Wood once. I met Peter Jackson. I met Orlando Bloom. And they're all really cool. I think of myself as being Jewish and Irish, despite the fact that I'm English. I would love to work in America. I wouldn't love to live there, but I'd love to experience working there. I'm possibly a very morbid person, but I think about death a lot. I'm also a fan of ridiculously colored and patterned socks. I'm very comfortable discussing my personal life, because it's so boring. I would consider doing any part as long as the script is good and the film has an interesting director. I get constantly mistaken for Elijah Wood. I was in Japan and someone held out a photo of him for me to sign. I think I tried to steal a Mars bar once from a shop, but then I went and put it back. I grew up listening to show tunes in the back of the car. That's what fame does to you. You acquire another self. I don't want anyone to ever say that I don't belong where I am. As far as I can tell, most actors' main motivation is self-doubt and neuroses. My parents were what I like to call proper musical fans. Lots of Sondheim was played in the car. I'm very interested in religion as something to study, but I'm not a religious person in the slightest. I'm not a religious person. My mom was of Jewish blood and my dad was Protestant. The thought of dancing scared me a lot, because I have absolutely no aptitude for it. How irritating it must be for people to be bombarded with me. And the people I'm best friends with on the films are not generally the actors. I'm 5'5", and I'll wear a big parka and put the hood up, and nobody gives me a second glance. Our business is infested with idiots who try to impress by using pretentious jargon. The best ideas come as jokes. Make your thinking as funny as possible. The more informative your advertising, the more persuasive it will be. Don't bunt. Aim out of the ballpark. Aim for the company of immortals. A good advertisement is one which sells the product without drawing attention to itself. Every advertisement should be thought of as a contribution to the complex symbol which is the brand image. Like a midwife, I make my living bringing new babies into the world, except that mine are new advertising campaigns. What you say in advertising is more important than how you say it. Political advertising ought to be stopped. It's the only really dishonest kind of advertising that's left. It's totally dishonest. 99% of advertising doesn't sell much of anything. The advertisers who believe in the selling power of jingles have never had to sell anything. Never stop testing, and your advertising will never stop improving. The pursuit of excellence is less profitable than the pursuit of bigness, but it can be more satisfying. Advertising people who ignore research are as dangerous as generals who ignore decodes of enemy signals. What really decides consumers to buy or not to buy is the content of your advertising, not its form. In the modern world of business, it is useless to be a creative, original thinker unless you can also sell what you create.
Develop your eccentricities while you are young. That way, when you get old, people won't think you're going gaga. The secret of long life is double careers. One to about age 60, then another for the next 30 years. I do not regard advertising as entertainment or an art form, but as a medium of information. Advertising reflects the mores of society, but it does not influence them. Good copy can't be written with tongue-in-cheek, written just for a living. You've got to believe in the product.